Okay, welcome back to the channel for some more Prime Cutz. This time up we've got something a bit different. It is 2.0, which to date is the highest budgeted Indian film with a budget of 81 million US dollars. Directed by Shankar, it is a sequel to his Entherian film. I'm going to get so many of these names badly wrong, but it is a science fiction action film. We open up with some really kind of nicely lit scenes of this man moving towards this cell tower, and eventually, yes, he does commit suicide, and that is our cold opening as we cut to some young students visiting a technology lab where they meet Amy Jackson's Nilla. Now, Amy Jackson here is a fascinating career. She started off as a model, but was eventually approached by some Indian film producers to star in one of their productions. It went really well for her, and ever since she's become a pretty big star in that part of the world. But yes, also here we are introduced or reintroduced, since this is a sequel, to Visejarian, the professor we'll call him, who is the inventor of a super powerful robot who will become important later on in the story. But as the student who hit on the robot Amy cycles home, his phone is pulled up into the air, and we have the sequence of lots of mobile phones being mysteriously pulled up into the air. And look out for that kind of bird motif appearing on the screens, because that is going to become important as the film moves along. So we cut to a scene of a sort of a government meeting where people are discussing the issue, and here we have a rival for the professor as he's showing the president some of the data that he's gathered, showing the phones hovering in the air. To be honest, that kind of sequence is quite heavy on pseudoscience language in the way that things like Star Trek used to be so bad at. So we had a brief sequence there with a phone shop waiting to get its new stock, but the delivery truck driving along, and doom, all the phones are gone. Now that's a really short kind of version of that scene, because in the full film the scene goes on quite a lot longer, and that is one of the issues with the film, is there are lots of great ideas and setups and sequences here, but a lot of them kind of go on just a little bit too long. Anyway, we kind of pick it up with the mobile phone shop operator in his home being besieged by phones, and I really love some of the imagery there. And yet he's killed by the phones in a quite gruesome manner, as you'll see in the screen in the subtitles. Yeah, he exploded. The phones exploded him. Anyway, the professor, as I'll continue to call him, and Neela go looking to investigate, and they manage to locate sort of where the phones are. And again, the imagery is beautiful there. It's kind of mimicking that kind of flock movement that you see with birds, before it then forms a bird's claw and starts pulling down phone reception towers. So we cut to, again, some government officials, and here there's a phone network chief executive sort of angry and demanding that more is done to help his company out. And we go back to some more kind of government conference sequences, which are kind of largely used here as kind of a source of exposition, and a bit of a reminder of what's happened before. So they're discussing the use of Chitty, who is this robot that we've mentioned. And here's another really imaginative sequence, again, as the mobile phone network sort of chief executive is confronted by the phones in the road, and like the shots that are just coming up now, I think, really cool, just amazing. One thing that does let it sort of slightly down is the pathway of phones just looks completely smooth and flat in the longer sequence. It doesn't really kind of look textured. And again, it was a sequence that goes on a bit too long. So our sort of leading hero pair are breaking into a lab with Neela being convinced to do it as ethical hacking. Essentially she's a kind of data-like character, I guess. But they're here to sort of reclaim Chitty, the robot. Now, I've not seen sort of the first film in the franchise, so I'm not entirely clear on what's happened there. But I believe the professor built him, and then through a sequence of events, the robot went rogue and started killing people and had to be deactivated. So we now have the phones, in this kind of eagle bird form, arriving into the cities and starting to sort of attack the military who are guarding the cell phone towers and destroying the cell towers. Basically, it's a bit, I guess, kind of kaiju movie. We're getting in towards that kind of almost similar territories like the Godzilla franchise at this point. And yeah, some of the CGI work is really good. Like, easily up there with, big budget American productions. And here comes Chitty, the super robot, to save the day and fight off the phones and save people. Where the CGI does get a bit kind of ropier is sometimes, all the textures aren't quite there, or things look a bit too clean. But I think the biggest thing that kind of lets it down is the physics of everything. Like, nothing really feels like it's got any weight to it. And yeah, the running style here does make me laugh. But you have to bear in mind that Rajinikanth, I think is the right pronunciation, who is the star of the film as the professor and as Chitty, was well into his 60s at the time that this film was made. So he's not a sort of really much of an action hero kind of physique at this point. But give him credit. He does well. Anyway, the heroes sort of start to trace things back to a local kind of bird sanctuary and household, as they're kind of following, radiation traces from what they're calling, I think, the fifth force. So the angry mobile phone bird monster appears, and what's happening here is they're trying to trap it and use some sort of radioelectric, magnetism waves, some kind of, wishy-washy science to neutralize the power around the phones and sort of, take the life out of them. And it looks like they might have succeeded, but there's an egg, and out of the egg comes this figure. And I really love the kind of design here and the use of the mobile phone screens to like show the character's face. It's great. It's really imaginative. So we're still not quite sure who this evil figure is, but here he's kind of trying to bargain with Chitty, kind of taking that line of, we're both artificial life forms. Humans suck. We need to kill humans because they kill birds. Boo, boo, humans. And he kind of moves away into this house. And this is where we essentially kind of transition into a flashback sequence, which is actually telling the story of the character we saw right at the start of the film in the cold opening. And it is revealed that this character was a studied ornithologist, and he had begun to note kind of declines in bird populations, and through his research he comes to the conclusion that it is mobile phone networks and antennas and things are essentially killing off bird populations. So he tries to convince, governmental figures, the wider science community of what he's found, but nobody will listen to him, and he sort of gets increasingly desperate, increasingly conscious that so many birds are being killed in and around cities. And after he's committed suicide on his cell tower, through the kind of electromagnetism waves there, his spirit is released, and that is what is kind of powering, the monster that's out of it. But anyway, kind of cut forward to a kind of celebratory conference, because everybody thinks that the solution has been dealt with, that everything is over, and everybody's like, yay, Chitty the robot actually is awesome, let's build loads of them. So here we have loads of Chitty the robots being sort of built in various stages of production. Again, there's some really nice kind of art direction here, and I really like the kind of almost old school sort of designs of the robots and things. Though how they go from that to looking like Chitty, it's a little less clear. But anyway, the professor's rival that we saw earlier is in another lab, and he's taking one of these what's called a red chip, and it's one of these red chips being inserted into Chitty that sent him evil previously. But anyway, the evil sort of force arrives in the professor's house and attacks him, and at first we don't see exactly what's happened to it, and we pick him up kind of wandering the city, protesting and asking for birds to be saved. So Chitty catches up with him, and in a sort of shocking twist, it turns out that he actually has been taken over by the sort of evil force, by the ornithologist's spirit. And he rips Chitty's arms off. He's got the best of Chitty. Oh no, what is going to happen here? And the professor's kind of fighting for control of his body. But here comes the phone eagle, and no, not for the only time, Neela ends up saving the day, rescues Chitty, puts him back together, and then she kind of reasons that the way to save the day is she needs to put one of these red chips into him, because it helps to upgrade him. It gives him a more kind of cocky attitude, I guess, which is what he needs to sort of help sort of defeat the villain. But she's careful to sort of program this thing where he's only allowed to attack the ornithologist's spirit and associated monsters. And Chitty gets like a cool kind of red Mohican makeover when he's put into that mode. So as we head into the sort of final third, the evil presence is taking over a football stadium, and essentially he blocks all of the spectators from escaping, and basically threatening to kill everybody within the stadium using radiation. Again, the actual science of it is very unclear and a bit confused, but that's not really important in these kind of films. Again, the nice touch with the no exits there showing up on the films. Chitty arrives dramatically to fight and save the day, and he's attacked by lots of individual kind of phone men, and he has a power to kind of pull guns towards him. I think it's magnetism, it's not really clear, but that leads to this amazing shot where he's got his kind of wheel of guns that he's firing, and you see a few shots there where this film was in 3D, so lots of things, and the action sequences flying directly at the screen. And then all the kind of chitties that we were seeing being built arrive, and they form this amazing kind of massing rolling ball, which they start shooting from. Now this sequence is just crazy. If the hero robot was really doing this, he would be killing all of these spectators. Bullets everywhere. Nice touch as he forms a bird cage around the giant evil bird. Then as the fight continues, you know, he decides he needs to get bigger because we're going to have a big kaiju fight essentially, and he pulls lots of things towards him, including some nice Honda product placement. And what really I like here as he emerges in his giant form is he has a six-pack made out of cars. Like, how amazing is that? Anyway, yeah, they fight, and it's, you know, like I say, kind of a Godzilla style fight at this point. And you know, the evil force is revealing its final form as the radiation power surge, you know, heads towards ever closer towards the stadium. But at the last minute, lots of mini chitties, which we have briefly seen kind of mentioned in the film, arrive riding doves, and they manage to kind of talk the evil spirit down because he doesn't want any birds to be harmed, because they're threatening basically to snap the necks of the doves that they're riding if he does anything to harm any of the civilians. I guess that's kind of where we're bringing in the idea of the red chip versions of Chitty being assholes, kind of. But anyway, yeah, eventually the evil spirit, you know, is forced to fly away. The professor is saved and rushed to hospital. Mini Chitty and bigger Chitty kind of, you know, do their bit of posing, you know, because the evil spirit has been chased away and then kind of forced into a trap where it's kind of been dissolved. Like, it's this big science fiction epic, and it's got some really cool ideas. It's got a very kind of environmental message at its heart, because it's all about, you know, wildlife versus technology. But yeah, what kind of lets the film down is its run length. It's about 2.5 hours, and I think if you cut it down to 2 hours, it would be great. It would really clip along. But as I've mentioned a couple of times, there's a couple of sequences that just go on a bit too long, stretch themselves out a bit too thin. But otherwise, yeah, it's well worth a watch, and I'm definitely going to check out the first film in the series, because this was, yeah, overall quite a lot of fun to sit and watch. But yeah, that was something a bit different for us on Prime Cutz this time around. But join us again soon for some more interesting oddities that dwell in Amazon Prime Video's vaults.